In 2005, I was a senior at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and I enrolled in a class called Native Americans in the 20th Century. I went into the class thinking, why do Native Americans still want to be different from everyone else? Why can't they just assimilate and speak English and be the same? Through that class, I came to learn the history of Native nations in this country. And I also came to learn that the US government had its own approaches to educating Native Americans. The policy was one of assimilation, where you take Native American children from their families and force them to attend boarding schools where they were not allowed to speak their native languages. They were not allowed to practice their religions. They were forced to speak English. They were forced to practice Christianity. And in my own life, as a child growing up in the 80s and 90s, I was bombarded with the melting pot metaphor, where we expected immigrants to this country to assimilate, to abandon their own languages, and to become American, whatever that is. So these policies and attitudes that we've had towards people that might be different or perceived as different carried forth, and they come from a long history. And the boarding schools had this ideology that one must kill the Indian in order to save the man. Rebecca Nagel, a Cherokee Nation citizen and journalist, writes that adjusted for inflation, the United States government spent $3 billion to support Native American boarding schools from 1877 to 1918. Boarding schools broke the transmission of language and culture and shared family values because they destroyed the bonds between children and their elders. The last residential boarding school in our country closed in 1973. And then, following boarding schools, many educational systems adopted English-only policies for education during the second half of the 20th century. Native children and the children of immigrants were not allowed to be taught in their languages. They were expected to only learn and be taught in English. The thing is that it's very difficult to become fluent in a language after childhood. It requires a lot of input, and it's difficult to get that when you're no longer a child. So these policies of assimilation in boarding schools were unfortunately highly effective in that now the vast majority of Native American people speak English as their first and often only language. In 2010, I was a graduate student at Columbia University in ethnomusicology, but I had continued to hold this interest in languages, and I began to wonder, what role can music play in language revitalization? And when I thought about where I would inquire about this further, I realized, why not come back to my home state here in North Carolina, where I can look at how the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians is working to preserve the Cherokee language. So I came here and I met all these wonderful Cherokee people, and they said, oh, cool, you're a musician and you write songs and you're learning the language. And I said, this is great. Hey, guess what? You're not just going to be the person that's studying music used for language revitalization. Guess what? We're hiring you, and you're going to be the music teacher at our Cherokee language immersion school. So I began working for New Gadua Academy, which is the Cherokee language immersion school here, about 20 miles over the mountain here in western North Carolina. And New Gadua is the inversion of a boarding school model, in that Cherokee is the intended language of instruction, and bilingualism in English is the goal. So there I taught music and I collaborated with many wonderful Cherokee speakers, including a wonderful lady named Nanny Taylor, who is my mentor. And she and I translated so many children's songs and popular songs together, including the Christmas song, What Child Is This?, to the tune Greensleeves. Kagi ustia uedzi meliunu gitane. Beautiful song. So I took this song that we had translated and recorded to my second grade class, and I was playing it, and they were sitting there in front of me, and one little boy's eyes filled up with tears, and they started streaming down his face. And he said, "I miss my grandma." And his grandmother had just recently passed. So all the other students started wailing and crying and talking about the people they had lost that they missed. So hear this song in Cherokee language, a beautiful tune. It connected these students to their community and to their elders in a way that can't be quantified by all the vocabulary lists and grammars in the world. In saving the language, these children hear the voices of their elders and their ancestors echo in their own words. They will carry forward the language that has made their people unique for thousands of years, even as they're part of a broader American culture where we can share Greensleeves as a beloved tune. We can be a multilingual country and still be united. Today, if you drive around the Qualla boundary, the reservation, you'll see signs that say, "Shi Odze Doha." We are still here. And the Cherokee people are still here, and they're thriving. However, the Cherokee language has not been as fortunate. Most recently, I was told that there are 190 first language speakers remaining. That's less than 1% of the tribe, and virtually all of them are senior citizens. The Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians has spent millions of its own funds, mostly from casino and gaming revenues, towards language revitalization programs. This includes the language immersion school for the children as well as adult immersion programs. Studies have shown that programs for reconnecting indigenous youth with their languages and cultures reduce social and health ailments such as drug abuse. So there's value in preserving the language beyond just saving the language itself. So as I worked with Nugadua Academy, I came to see how much saving Cherokee language mattered to the Cherokee people. And then as I was in their community and became part of their community, it mattered to me too. And I realized that I could contribute something even though I'm not an enrolled member of the tribe, even though I'm not a native person, I have something to offer to help. Saving indigenous languages relies on individuals to make a difference. You can throw all the money in the world at the problem, and it won't save the languages because it requires individuals day in and day out to take action. And even those of us who aren't native can contribute and learn something in order to help keep these languages alive. You might wonder, why should I care? It's not my language. And there's an appeal to science here as well. And that multilingualism is very powerful in that it gives us a different way of understanding and perceiving the world. And this can result in technological and scientific advancement for humankind. To illustrate, do you remember the states of matter from physics? You learn solid, liquid, gas, and maybe, if you were a good student, you remember plasma. We learn these in school, in science class, and they are part of the natural order of the world in our minds. That's just how the world is. That's how it's organized, because that's what we learn in English. However, Cherokee has a different way of understanding matter. It uses a classificatory verb system with 5 categories to talk about the physical properties of objects: solid, flexible, long rigid, liquid, and living. So for instance, in the Cherokee language, you have 5 forms of the verb for to have. So let's say I have a jar of water. Agineha, I have a liquid. Now let's say I take an ice cube out of that jar of water. Agiha, I have a solid. Now, let's say I have a friendly purring cat. Cat is Weisha in Cherokee. Weisha agikaha. I have a living cat. Now, let's say my cat had to go in for surgery and it's lying there unconscious on the table, and I pick it up. Weisha agina'a. I have a flexible cat. God forbid my cat doesn't make it through surgery, and 24 hours later, his rigor mortis. Weisha aguaya. I have a rigid cat. Less morbidly, I could also just say gansta aguaya. I have a stick. So Cherokee grammatically requires that whoever's speaking it pays attention to these different qualities of objects that are different from what we use in English. So it categorizes and organizes the world in a unique way to Cherokee language. I'm now the director of the Cherokee language program at Western Carolina University, and I have many non-Cherokee people, like many of you, that take my Cherokee language classes, both in-person classes, and we also offer online classes. Many of these people are classroom teachers from the area who want to have a greater understanding of Cherokee culture so they can relate better to the Cherokee students in their classrooms. Or they're community members who want to have some better sense of this indigenous language that's unique to this place and to the community around them. Each little bit of Cherokee language that we learn as individuals, we carry forward with us. That's one part, more part of it that survives, whether we're fluent or not. And while we can't reverse our nation's past mistakes towards indigenous peoples, we can throw our support behind the preservation of our country's endangered languages. And in doing so, we also preserve some of our lesser known histories, knowledges, and perspectives that are unique to this place, such as Junaluska, Junalahansky, who was a Cherokee leader from this region in the early 19th century. And as Americans, all of us as Americans, in preserving our country's indigenous languages, we also hold true to that motto, e pluribus unum, that we are out of many, one. Not because we eradicate our differences, but because we celebrate them as our greatest strength. Thank you.